Itachi woke up every day with the feeling of losing an invisible war. It wasn't against the world. It was against his own mind. Every thought was an enemy. Every emotion, a threat. He tried to block, to control, to suppress. He built walls during the day, but at night, the chaos returned, coming from within. Until he realized something brutal. He was building the wrong fortress. Thick walls, locked gates, defenses everywhere, but no foundation, no internal structure, no real architecture. In the 17th century, Yagyū Munenori, samurai master and shogunate strategist, taught something that modern psychology took 400 years to confirm. The warrior's mind is not an immovable stone. It is a polished mirror. It reflects everything, but retains nothing. The secret is not in blocking chaos with higher walls. It is in creating internal architecture where chaos cannot find a place to hold on to. The difference between a fortress that resists and a fortress that remains. Mark Epstein, Buddhist psychiatrist and author of Going to Pieces Without Falling Apart, adds, "The problem is not having difficult thoughts. It is believing that you need to control them. Modern anxiety is not born from external noise. It is born from the attempt to build a fortress without understanding how fortresses work. You can stack bricks forever. Without the correct foundation, it will collapse in the first storm." And here is the truth that neuroscience confirms. Andrew Newberg, a pioneer neuroscientist in meditation studies, found that advanced meditators do not have less brain activity during deep states. They have organized neural patterns. The chaos does not decrease. The internal organization increases. They didn't build a bigger fortress. They built the correct fortress. The hidden truth no one tells you. You don't need more willpower. You don't need thicker walls. You don't need to fight harder. You need the correct blueprint. The iron mind system. 3 pillars that are the foundation of all real mental fortresses. Pillar 1. Containment. The foundation. Consciously choosing what deserves to enter. Not blocking everything, but having gates with guards, not unprotected holes. Pillar 2. Clarification. The structure. Seeing what enters without distortion. Not eliminating information, but processing it without emotional contamination. Pillar 3. Command. The strength. Acting from an immovable center. Not reacting to every wave, but responding from the point the wave cannot reach. When the 3 align, you do not resist the chaos of the world. You have simply built a fortress where chaos cannot enter. Not because the walls are higher, but because the architecture is correct. The samurai called this Mushin no Shin, mind without mind. The state where the fortress is so well built that you don't even realize it's there. It operates automatically. It protects naturally. It functions perfectly. By the end of this video, you will not stop thinking. You will not eliminate anxiety. You will learn to build a mental fortress where the chaos of the world simply has no access. Like the samurai who walks through the storm without getting wet. Not by magic, not by luck, by correct architecture. This is Itachi's journey, from building walls that collapsed, to building a fortress that remains. This is Itachi's journey, and it can be yours. Itachi woke up tired every day, even sleeping 8 hours. It wasn't physical fatigue. It was something deeper, more destructive. It was chronic cognitive exhaustion. Neuroscience has a name for this: allostatic load, allostatic overload. It is when your nervous system operates in emergency mode 24/7. You are not living. You are mentally surviving every second. He checked his cell phone 147 times a day. Yes, he counted once. Every notification was an invasion. Every email, a potential threat. Every unanswered message, accumulated guilt. At night, when he finally lay down, his mind wouldn't turn off. It replayed conversations from 5 years ago. It created catastrophic scenarios about events that would never happen. It analyzed past decisions on an infinite loop. But here is what Itachi didn't know. He wasn't suffering because he had too many problems. He was suffering because his mind had no triage system. Everything entered with the same urgency. Work email, childhood trauma, shopping list, stranger's opinion on social media, embarrassing memory from 2011. Without internal hierarchy, everything became noise at the same frequency. Yagyū Munenori, if he could see Itachi, would say something simple but devastating. You don't have enemies. You have gates without guards. In Bushido, there is a forgotten concept called Fudoshin, immovable mind. And here is the crucial difference that changes everything. Fudoshin does not mean a mind without thoughts. It means a mind that is not shaken by the thoughts. The lake does not stop receiving waves, but the bottom remains still. This is the foundation of the iron mind system. The chaos does not disappear. You build a depth that it cannot reach. Itachi needed a test, a way to see the chaos he was carrying. So he did something simple, but revealing. Diagnostic technique, the mental chaos map. For 24 hours, he wrote down every intrusive thought that arose. No filter, no judgment, just observation. At the end of the day, he categorized everything into 4 groups: urgent and important, needs immediate action, urgent but irrelevant, seems important, but is not important but not urgent, can wait, but not be forgotten, pure noise, serves no purpose. The result shocked him. 78% of his mental chaos was in the pure noise category. Thoughts about things he couldn't control. Worries about hypothetical judgments. Ruminations about conversations already over. Invasion without permission. Yagyū Munenori wrote in his treatise Heiho Kadensho, "A castle without gates is just a pile of stones. A mind without a containment system is the same. Everything enters, nothing leaves, until you collapse under the sheer weight of the accumulated." Itachi realized he didn't need more strength. He needed architecture. And that architecture began with a word he never took seriously. Containment. First pillar. Containment. Itachi always thought being well-informed was a virtue. So he consumed everything. News. Social media. Podcasts. Infinite threads. Opinions of people he would never meet. All the time. He called this staying updated. But Mark Epstein has another name for it: cognitive intoxication. Every piece of information that enters your brain leaves a chemical residue. Dopamine, cortisol, adrenaline. It is not metaphorical. It is literal. A study from the University of California found every time you switch tasks or process new information, your brain needs an average of 23 minutes to regain deep focus. Itachi switched information every 4 minutes. He wasn't informing himself. He was fragmenting himself. In Bushido, there is a little-known principle called Zanshin, residual awareness. It's not just mindfulness. It's something more specific: mental boundary vigilance. After the duel, the samurai does not immediately relax. He maintains awareness of the surrounding space, observing if there is a new threat. Because the real danger doesn't just come from the known opponent. It comes from not noticing when the guard has dropped. First pillar of the iron mind system. You need a permanent guard at the gates of perception. But here is the paradox no one teaches you. Containment is not isolation. It is not ignorance. It is curation of consciousness. Mark Epstein warns, openness without discernment is not wisdom. It is vulnerability. The brain has a limited processing capacity, approximately 120 bits per second. For context, understanding a single person speaking requires about 60 bits per second. This means that every stimulus you allow in steals space from something more important. Andrew Newberg, in his studies with Tibetan monks, discovered something fascinating. The most advanced meditators did not try to absorb everything. They developed what he called intentional selective attention, not out of coldness, out of neurological economy. The enlightened mind is not the one that sees everything. It is the one that sees exactly what matters. Itachi needed a practical system, something that worked in the real world, not just in silent retreat. So he created fortification practice, the ritual of the 3 gates before consuming any information: news, message, video, conversation. He asked 3 questions. Gate 1, relevance. Does this serve my higher purpose? Not, is it interesting? Not, might it be useful someday? Does it serve the higher purpose? Gate 2, truth. Is this verifiable or just opinion disguised as fact? In an age of post-truth, this question is psychological armor. Gate 3, urgency. Does this require immediate action or is it emotional entertainment? The difference between useful information and noise disguised as productivity. If the information does not pass the 3 gates, it does not enter. Simple, brutal, effective. In the first 48 hours applying this, Itachi realized 87% of what he consumed did not pass the first gate. He wasn't educating himself. He was distracting himself with the appearance of productivity. Yagyū Munenori wrote, "The warrior does not block 1,000 blows. He simply is not where the blows happen." Containment is not constant effort of resistance. It is strategic positioning where the attack cannot reach. Think of it this way. Your body automatically rejects physical poison. You don't need to try hard to vomit something toxic. It's a reflex. But your mind, it accepts informational poison every day and still asks for more. Containment is developing the same reflex. Recognize cognitive toxicity and block it before it enters the system. Not out of fear of the world, out of love for one's own clarity. But containment is only the first pillar, because even with guarded gates, information still enters. The question now is, what do you do with what manages to get in? And here begins the second pillar, the most subtle, the most dangerous when ignored. Clarification. Second pillar, clarification. Itachi was absolutely certain he knew what people thought of him. He didn't need to ask. He already knew. The colleague who didn't reply to the email, obviously annoyed with him. The friend who cancelled the get-together, clearly losing interest in the friendship. The boss who didn't praise the project, undoubtedly disappointed. He built entire narratives based on interpretations of silences, until the day he discovered something devastating. He wasn't reading reality. He was projecting fear onto it. Cognitive psychology has a term for this: emotional confirmation bias. Your brain doesn't seek truth. It seeks confirmation of what it already believes. Visual. brain with colored filters distorting images. If you believe you are inadequate, your brain will find evidence of it in every interaction. If you believe the world is dangerous, you will interpret neutrality as a threat. The mind without clarification does not process information. It contaminates it with unconscious bias. Yagyū Munenori taught a concept that would change everything for Itachi. Shoshin, beginner's mind, but not in the way you think. Shoshin is not naivete. It is not forgetting what you know. It is the absence of preconclusions. See every situation as if it were the first time. When you process information with a beginner's mind, you see what is there. Not what you fear is there. Not what you hope is there. What is there? Mark Epstein, in Thoughts Without a Thinker, explains, Buddhist meditation doesn't teach you to control thoughts. It teaches you to observe them without fusing with them. The difference is everything. When you fuse with a thought, you become it. I am anxious. I am a failure. I am inadequate. When you observe a thought, you realize, a thought about anxiety appeared. Interesting. My mind created a narrative of failure. Look, an interpretation of inadequacy is arising. You are not the thought. You are the space where it appears. Neuroscience confirms, your brain does not record reality. It records the interpretation of reality. 10 people witness the same event. 10 different narratives emerge. Not because reality changed, but because each mind added layers of personal distortion. Second pillar of the iron mind system. Clean perception generates a clean response. Distorted perception generates multiplied chaos. Itachi needed a practical method, something applicable in the moment of distortion. So he developed purification technique, the neutral question protocol when something bothered him, and this happened several times a day. He stopped. Before reacting, he asked 3 questions. Question 1, fact. What actually happened? No adjectives. No interpretation. Just raw data. Itachi's real example. Distorted. My boss humiliated me in the meeting. Fact. My boss said, this report needs more data, in the presence of 4 other people. The difference is abyssal. Question 2. Feeling. What did I feel? No judgment of right or wrong. Just emotional recognition. Identified feeling. I felt shame, anger, and fear of being seen as incompetent. Naming the emotion reduces its intensity by up to 50%. UCLA studies confirm, when you put a name to what you feel, the brain's amygdala, fear center, decreases activity. Question 3. Fiction. What story did I create about it? Here is the turning point. Identified fiction. I created a story that my boss hates me, that everyone in the room judged me, that I'm going to be fired, that I'm incapable, that I'll never grow professionally. All of that from one sentence about a report. Separating the 3 is clarification. Mixing them is chaos. Yagyū Munenori taught his disciples, when you see a sword coming, do not see death. See metal moving in space. Clarity saves. Interpretation kills. Andrew Newberg discovered something fascinating in his studies. Experienced Buddhist monks show increased activity in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex during meditation. This is the area responsible for emotional processing without reactivity. They do not suppress emotion. They process emotion without distortion. They feel anger, but they don't create a story about the anger. They feel fear, but they don't identify with the fear. They feel sadness, but they don't build an identity around the sadness. This is not coldness. It is emotional freedom. Think of it this way. you do not see the world. You see through lenses accumulated from past experiences. Childhood trauma, lens. Past rejection, lens. Internalized criticism, lens. Fear of inadequacy, lens. Layer upon layer upon layer, until you no longer see the world, only a distorted projection of it. Clarification is cleaning the glass, daily, not to change the world outside, to finally see it as it is. But even with containment preventing unnecessary noise, even with clarification cleaning perception, something is still missing, because knowledge without action is sterile philosophy, and action without a center is chaos disguised as productivity. The third pillar is where everything fuses. Command, acting from the immovable center. Third pillar, command. Itachi had all the insights, read all the books, understood all the concepts. But when the moment to act arrived, he froze. He analyzed all the variables, considered all possible outcomes, waited for the perfect moment. He called this being responsible. Yagyū Munenori would have seen it clearly. Hesitation is not wisdom. It is fear dressed as prudence. True command does not come from being certain. It comes from acting even in uncertainty, but from the center, not the anxious periphery. In Zen Budo there is a principle called Mizu no Kokoro, mind like water. Still water reflects perfectly, but when you throw a stone into it, it responds instantly. It doesn't hesitate. It doesn't analyze. It doesn't question. It just responds, and then returns to the state of clarity. This is command from the center. Mark Epstein explains, the hesitant ego always asks, what if I fail? The clear mind asks, what needs to be done now? The difference is not just linguistic. It is neurological. Andrew Newberg made a counterintuitive discovery. Meditators in a deep state of presence have a faster reaction time, not slower. Why? Because action from the center is response without the interference of fear. When you act from the anxious periphery, hyperactive amygdala, fear center, suppressed prefrontal cortex, conscious decision center. Result: impulsive reaction or paralysis. When you act from the center, active ventromedial prefrontal cortex, clear processing. Regulated amygdala, emotion present, but not dominant. Result: fast and precise decision. Third pillar of the iron mind system. Command is not force. It is clarity of execution without internal hesitation. Itachi needed to reprogram a reflex, because intellectual knowledge does not change behavior. Conscious repetition changes behavior. So he created centering practice, the fixed point exercise every morning before anything else. Sit, close your eyes, find the center. Step 1. Imagine a luminous point in the center of the chest, not in the brain, not in the stomach, in the physical heart area. Step 2. Inhale deeply. The point expands like a sphere of light. Step 3. Exhale slowly. The point concentrates again. Repeat 21 times. Why 21? Because it's enough time for the nervous system to recognize a new pattern, but not so long that you lose consistency. Step 4. Real application. When you need to act, in a difficult conversation, an important decision, a moment of pressure, visualize the action coming from that central point, not from the anxious head, from the unbreakable center. Itachi noticed an immediate difference. Actions coming from the head had a nervous urgency. actions coming from the center had weight and clarity. It wasn't about being slower. It was about eliminating noise between intention and execution. Yagyū Munenori told a story about a master archer. The common archer aims at the target. The true archer becomes the target and the arrow at the same time. When there is no separation between intention and execution, when there is no internal voice questioning every move, the action happens without effort, without doubt, without hesitation. That is command. And when the three pillars fuse, containment preventing unnecessary noise, clarification cleaning perception, command executing from the immovable center, something extraordinary happens. Something that neuroscience took decades to begin to understand. Mushin no Shin. Mind without mind. The state that the samurai sought. The state that science can now measure. Itachi doubted that Mushin was real. It seemed too esoteric, too mystical, too impossible. Mind without mind. How does that make sense? Until he read the studies. Newberg placed Tibetan monks in brain scanners during deep meditation. What he discovered changed contemplative neuroscience forever. During deep zazen states, there was a deactivation of the superior parietal lobe. This is the area responsible for the perception of the self separate from the world. The monks did not feel mystical union. Neurologically, the boundary between self and non-self disappeared. It was not belief. It was a measurable phenomenon. But here is the most fascinating part. During flow states, what athletes call being in the zone, and samurai called Mushin, something called transient hypofrontality occurs. Transient equals temporary. Hypo equals reduced. Frontality equals activity of the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the seat of self-criticism, anxious planning, internal narration, constant judgment, sense of a separate self. During Mushin, this area temporarily decreases activity. This is not turning off the brain. It is deactivating the inner critic, the anxious planner, the compulsive narrator. What remains? Pure action. Iron mind system activated at maximum level. Containment blocked external noise. Clarification cleaned internal perception. Command executed from the center. Now, in the state of Mushin, you disappear. Only clear action, clean perception, total presence remains. But Mark Epstein issues a crucial warning. You don't meditate to achieve Mushin. You meditate to create the conditions where Mushin can naturally emerge. It's like sleeping. The more you try to sleep, the less it happens. You create the conditions for sleep, darkness, silence, comfort, and then allow it to happen. Mushin is the same. You don't force it. You facilitate it. Itachi developed a simple technique for this. Facilitation technique. The non-interference practice. Choose a repetitive and safe task. Walking, washing dishes, drawing, sweeping the floor, folding clothes. Single rule. Do it without trying to do it well. Just do it. When the internal voice starts to comment, am I doing this right? Is this working? Should I be feeling something special now? Gently ignore it. Return to the action. Do not fight the thoughts. Do not follow them. Just recognize and return. Recognize and return. Recognize and return. With time, and not much time, the brain learns. It can operate without the narrator. Yagyū Munenori compared Mushin to an orchestra without a conductor. Each musician knows their part so deeply that coordination happens through resonance, not command. Your mind can operate like this, each part doing what is necessary, without a central ego trying to control everything. Thought when necessary, emotion when appropriate, action when required, without interference from the anxious self. But here is the confusion that destroys everything, the deadly idea of an empty mind, because emptying is not the goal. It never was. Itachi sat down to meditate and tried to not think. He failed every time. 5 seconds of silence. Then, I'm thinking. I shouldn't be thinking. Why am I thinking? I need to stop thinking about thinking. He thought he was failing, until he understood the subtlety that Yagyū Munenori taught. Empty mind does not mean absence of content. It means absence of attachment to the content. The difference is everything. The mind can be full of thoughts, but if none stick, it remains empty, like a cinema screen. 1,000 images projected, but the screen is never full. In Buddhism, there is a fundamental concept. Ku, dynamic emptiness. Ku is not nothing. It is unmanifested potential. White canvas before the painting, silence before the music, space before the architecture. The emptiness is not dead. It is pregnant with possibilities. Mark Epstein. Empty mind is not mind erased. It is mind available. Here is the revelation that frees. You will never stop thinking as long as you are alive. And you don't need to. The goal is not to eliminate thought. It is to develop a non-reactive relationship with it. A thought comes. You notice. It goes. Like a cloud crossing the sky. The sky does not become the cloud. The sky does not fight the cloud. The sky simply allows it to pass. Iron mind at the maximum level. You are not your thoughts. You are the space where they appear. Andrew Newberg discovered, experienced meditators do not have fewer thoughts during meditation. They have a different relationship with the thoughts that arise. Common brain. Thought arises, immediate identification, emotional reaction, compulsive action. Trained brain. Thought arises, recognition, observation, conscious choice. The difference is not in the thought. It is in the space between thought and reaction. And in that microscopic space is all freedom. Itachi developed a practice that changed everything. Detachment practice. The cinema screen exercise. Sit in silence. Only 3 minutes initially. Observe thoughts arising. Do not follow them. Do not suppress them. Just observe them as images projected onto a cinema screen. You are not the actor in the scenes. You are not the scenes. You are the screen. The images constantly change. Memory of yesterday. Worry about tomorrow. Judgment about now. Anger. Fear. Joy. Boredom. Confusion. All passing across the screen. But the screen remains. When you realize this viscerally, not intellectually, but viscerally, you have understood Mushin. Mark Epstein recounts a story of a Zen monk who told him, "When I was young, I thought enlightenment would mean the end of suffering. Now I know. It means the end of resistance to suffering." Empty mind is not mind without pain. It is mind that does not fight the pain when it comes. It is not absence of fear. It is presence even with fear. It is not the elimination of disturbing thoughts. It is the capacity to observe them without being dragged away by them. Yagyū Munenori used the analogy of the ancient mirror. The mirror reflects 1,000 faces, but it doesn't get full afterward. It simply reflects the next one without carrying the memory of the previous one. Your mind can operate like this. Full experience of every moment, but without accumulating emotional residue from the past. This is not indifference. It is the freedom to be completely present without being a prisoner of old stories. But to get here, to truly understand this, something needs to happen first. Something you probably fear more than anything else. Breakage. The necessary destruction. Itachi had a complete breakdown at 29. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't sudden. It was like a building collapsing in slow motion. One day, he simply stopped. He could no longer pretend he was okay. He could no longer maintain the mask. He could no longer fight. He thought it was the end. It was the beginning. Because only when your old mental structure completely collapses can you build new, functional architecture. Yagyū Munenori said, "The sword that never breaks has never truly been tested." You don't discover your true strength by maintaining the facade. You discover it when the facade falls and you are still standing. In Zen Buddhism, there is a concept of satori, awakening through rupture. Satori does not come from gradual evolution. It comes from a sudden break of pattern, like ice that holds frozen water for years. When it finally cracks, the water flows free, not despite the breakage, because of the breakage. Mark Epstein, in Going to Pieces Without Falling Apart, writes, "Sometimes the ego needs to shatter for you to realize that you were not the ego. You were the one who observed it shatter." When Itachi collapsed, he thought, "I am finished." But there was a part of him, quiet, observant, that noticed, "Interesting. I am thinking that I am finished." Who was the observer? If he was the collapse, who was perceiving the collapse? That question changed everything. Here is the modern trap. You want growth without pain, transformation without destruction, rebirth without death. But it doesn't work that way. Andrew Newberg studied accounts of transformative experiences across different traditions: shamanism, Buddhism, mystical Christianity, Sufism. The pattern was always the same. Symbolic death precedes real rebirth. Not the death of you, but the death of the version of you that no longer serves. The caterpillar does not gradually improve until it becomes a butterfly. It completely dissolves into liquid inside the cocoon. Total disintegration. Then, reconstruction as something completely new. The iron mind system does not protect you from pain. It teaches you to pass through it without getting lost in it. Containment does not prevent collapse. It prevents you from collapsing for the wrong reasons. Clarification does not eliminate pain. It shows you the difference between real pain and imagined pain. Command does not save you from falling. It teaches you to act even as you fall. Itachi needed a ritual. Something concrete to symbolize what was happening internally. So he created transmutation technique, the ritual of conscious burning. Step 1. Write down on paper all the beliefs about yourself that limit you. Do not edit. Do not judge. Just write. I am anxious. I will never succeed. I am not strong. I don't deserve. I am inadequate. All the stories you carry as identity. Step 2. Read them aloud. Every sentence. Feel their weight. Acknowledge that you carried them. Step 3. Burn the paper. Not as magic. As a symbol of conscious decision. You are not these stories. You carried them. But now you choose to let them go. Itachi burned 17 sheets of paper that day. Years of identity built on shame, fear, and inadequacy, transformed into ashes. Yagyū Munenori taught, the true warrior dies before entering battle. Thus, when he faces the enemy, he no longer fears losing what no longer exists. A dead ego cannot be wounded. A released identity cannot be threatened. A burned story can no longer hold you captive. The phoenix is not reborn despite the ashes. It is reborn because of them. Your mental collapse is not evidence of weakness. It is the raw material for your reconstruction as a living fortress. But a fortress is not built in one day. It is built over 1,000 ordinary days. And each of those days needs a system. It needs practice. It needs an unbreakable daily method. Itachi had insight. He had knowledge. He even had a ritual of transformation. But every Monday he would think, I'm going to start for real this week. He waited for the perfect moment. It never came. Until he understood a brutal truth. You don't need a 30-day retreat. You need 5 minutes a day. Non-negotiable. The fortress is not built in one epic day. It is built over 1,000 ordinary days. In Japan, there is a business principle that revolutionized manufacturing. Kaizen, continuous improvement. Kaizen does not seek perfection. It seeks imperceptible daily progress. 1% better every day. If you improve 1% per day, in 1 year you are 37 times better. Not by magic, by the mathematics of consistency. Andrew Newberg confirms, neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself, does not come from occasional intense practice. It comes from consistent minimum practice. 10 minutes daily, 2 hours on the weekend. Always. Because the brain does not change through intensity. It changes through patterned repetition. The revelation of microdiscipline. You don't need to meditate for 1 hour. You need 3 conscious breaths, 5 times a day. You need 2 minutes of silence before checking your phone. You need 30 seconds of pause before reacting to a difficult message. Iron Mind System in practice. It is not about grand heroic gestures. It is about micro-interventions that reprogram the neural pattern. Mark Epstein explains, transformation doesn't happen in a moment of insight. It happens in the 1,000 moments afterward, when you choose to act differently. Insight without practice is spiritual entertainment. Practice without insight is empty ritual. You need both. Itachi created a simple system, so simple that it was impossible to fail. Integration protocol, the 3-3-3 method every day, without exception. 3 minutes in the morning, before phone, before coffee, before any external input. Sit in silence. Just breathe. No goal. No searching. No trying to empty the mind. Just 3 minutes of existing without an agenda. 3 pauses during the day. Before a meal. Before a meeting. Before an important task. Stop. Breathe 3 times deeply. Center yourself. Activate the fixed point, that luminous point in the chest. Remember, you act from the center, not the anxious periphery. 3 minutes at night, before sleeping. Review the day. No judgment. No guilt. Just observation. 3 questions. What entered through containment? What did I allow to access my mind? What was clarified? Where did I separate fact, feeling, and fiction? Where did I act from command? When did I act from the center versus when did I react from the periphery? Not to criticize yourself, to calibrate the system. In the first weeks, Itachi constantly failed, forgot in the morning, skipped pauses during the day, fell asleep without reviewing. But here is the secret he learned. perfection kills progress. You don't need to do it perfectly. You need to do it more often than not doing it. 50% consistency is infinitely better than 0%. 70% consistency transforms you. 90%, you become unrecognizable in 6 months. Yagyū Munenori compared practice to a drop of water piercing stone. One drop does not pierce stone by force. It pierces it by constancy. Your practice does not need to be heroic. It needs to be inevitable as breathing. But all practice, all system, all method is only worth something if it survives the real test, because an untested fortress is not a fortress. It is a simulation. And now comes the final test. Itachi achieved mental clarity in a controlled environment. Morning meditation, perfect. Scheduled pauses, it worked. Nightly review, easy enough. But when he returned to the real chaos of life, impossible deadlines, interpersonal conflicts, financial emergencies, everything crumbled. He realized a devastating truth. An untested fortress is not a fortress. It is a simulation. Yagyū Munenori taught a concept called hydration, ordinary mind under extraordinary pressure. It's not about eliminating the pressure. It's about maintaining clarity when everything around you collapses. Not reacting with panic when a sword comes. Not reacting with arrogance when victory comes. Just responding from the center. Always. The test of the iron mind system. Do you maintain the 3 pillars when everything around you crumbles? Or were they just philosophical decoration? Mark Epstein warns, meditation that only works in a perfect environment is not practice. It is escape disguised as growth. You don't need more external peace. You need to develop the capacity to create an island of clarity in the middle of an ocean of chaos. Andrew Newberg studied Tibetan monks who meditated not just in monasteries, but in Tibetan sky burial sites, surrounded by decomposing bodies. Why? Because anyone can find peace in a Zen garden. The real test is, can you find peace in hell? Itachi needed to test himself. For real. So he created Fortress Test, the intentional chaos challenge. Choose a challenging day. Purposefully, do not avoid stressful situations. Difficult meeting you've been putting off for weeks? Schedule it. Difficult conversation you dread? Initiate it. Task that scares you? Start it. During each situation, observe with surgical precision. Are the 3 pillars active? Containment. Did I block unnecessary noise? Or did I let anticipatory anxiety invade? Clarification. Am I seeing facts or projecting fears? Did I separate feeling from fiction? Command. Am I acting from the center or reacting from the anxious periphery? The first time Itachi did this, he failed brutally. In the first difficult meeting, anxiety took over. Containment? None. Mental noise invaded completely. Clarification? 0. He saw threats where there was only neutrality. Command? He reacted from pure panic. He felt like a failure. But then he realized he had observed the collapse while collapsing. A part of him, that observant, silent part, had seen everything, and if he saw it, it means there was a space between him and the reaction. A microscopic space. But space. Second attempt, a week later. Containment worked for 30 seconds before crumbling. Clarification appeared for brief moments. Command came from the center once during the entire interaction. It wasn't perfection, but it was measurable progress. Third time. Fourth. 10th. Each time, one more second of containment. Each time, one more moment of clarity. Each time, one more action coming from the center. Yagyū Munenori said, "The warrior is not born in peace. He is born in war. And he only exists because war has tested him 1,000 times. Every pressure was a forge. Every test was an opportunity to strengthen what was built." Mark Epstein tells a story about a tree. A tree grown in a greenhouse grows fast, tall, beautiful, but when planted in the real world, it collapses in the first storm. Why? Because it never developed deep roots. It was never tested. A tree that grows in the forest, exposed to winds, rains, storms, grows slowly, but it develops roots that penetrate deep layers of the earth. When the storm comes, it sways, but it does not fall. You don't grow by avoiding pressure. You grow by remaining rooted while the pressure tries to tear you out. 6 months after the first test, Itachi faced a real crisis: job loss, family conflict, health issue, all at once, the same week. In the past, he would have collapsed completely, but now, containment activated automatically. It blocked the noise of others' opinions, catastrophic news, apocalyptic thoughts. It only allowed entry to what served the solution. Clarification operated under extreme pressure. He saw, fact, I lost my job. I need a new one. I have 3 months of savings. Feeling, I feel fear, shame, and uncertainty. Fiction. Narrative that I am a failure and will never recover. He separated the three, acted only on the fact. Command came from the center, not from panic, not from despair, from the fixed point in the chest. He updated his resume, activated his network of contacts, renegotiated debts, prioritized health, everything with surgical clarity. Not because he didn't feel fear, but because fear no longer commanded the decisions. Andrew Newberg explains what happens neurologically. When you train a system consistently, the brain creates automatic neural pathways. Under pressure, you don't need to remember to use the system. The system operates automatically, like a trained muscle that acts by reflex. Containment is not conscious effort. It is an installed filter. Clarification is not laborious analysis. It is standard clean perception. Command is not a heroic decision. It is the natural response from the center. When the three fuse under real pressure, you achieve Yagyū, ordinary mind in extraordinary circumstance. Yagyū Munenori wrote at the end of his life, I spent 50 years learning to use the sword. In the last 10, I learned not to need it, because the true warrior is not the one who wins battles. He is the one who walks through the battlefield and is untouched, not by luck, not by magic, by an internal architecture so solid that external chaos finds no place to penetrate. Itachi did not become invincible. He became something better. He became architected. And now, finally, he understood the final paradox. Itachi walks through the same city that used to destroy him. Horns, screams, crowds, rush, collective anxiety. Nothing has changed outside. But inside him, unbreakable silence. He didn't block the world. He built an internal structure so solid that the world can no longer invade the center. Recap of the Iron Mind System. Pillar 1. Containment. Permanent guard at the gates of perception. Not everything that knocks on the door deserves to enter. The ritual of the three gates. Relevance, truth, urgency. If it doesn't pass the three, it doesn't enter. Pillar 2. Clarification. Processing without distortion. See fact, feel emotion, recognize fiction. Separately. The neutral question protocol. Fact, feeling, fiction. Mixing them is chaos. Separating them is clarity. Pillar 3. Command. Acting from the immovable center. Decision without hesitation. Execution without the interference of fear. The fixed point exercise. Every action comes from the center, not the anxious periphery. Final state. Mushin no Shin. When the three fuse, you disappear. Only clear action remains. Clean perception. Total presence. It is not the death of the self. It is the transcendence of the limited self. The truth of Yagyū Munenori, finally realized. The warrior's mind is a polished mirror. It reflects everything, retains nothing. Itachi did not eliminate thoughts. He stopped being a prisoner of them. Mark Epstein said something in his last book that summarizes everything. Enlightenment is not arriving at a place without problems. It is developing an internal structure where problems no longer define who you are. You still feel fear, but you are not the fear. You still feel anger, but you are not the anger. You still feel pain, but you are not the pain. You are the space where all of that appears and disappears. Andrew Newberg concluded his studies with a phrase that changed contemplative neuroscience. The enlightened brain is not anatomically different. It is functionally different. Same parts. Completely new architecture. You have the same parts you always had. Thoughts, emotions, memories, fears. But now, they operate under a different system. A system with gates. A system with clarity. A system with command. The iron mind system. So here is the final invitation. Don't ask, is my mind empty? Ask, when chaos comes, do I remain? If yes, you are already the fortress. If no, now you have the construction map. 3 pillars, 1,000 days, one system. It is not fast. It is not easy, but it is possible, and unlike everything you've tried before, it works under real pressure. Itachi smiles, not because he defeated chaos, not because he eliminated suffering, not because he achieved impossible perfection. He smiles because he learned to inhabit the chaos without becoming it, and that is the victory no one can take from you. The strongest fortress has no walls. It has clarity about what is allowed to enter. And now you know how to build it. If this video gave you anything, clarity, direction, hope, leave a like. If you know someone who is collapsing under the weight of their own mental chaos, share it. And if you want more content about building an unbreakable mind through samurai philosophy, deep psychology, and applied neuroscience, subscribe. Turn on notifications, because the journey doesn't end here. It only begins. We'll see you at the next fortress.